Hey guys, KHNI Master here with another collection video. This time I'm going with my Nintendo 64 collection. Last time I did GameCube, this time I'm doing Nintendo 64. Well, the Nintendo 64 was the first video game console I ever played and ever owned. And unlike my GameCube, I still own my I still own my Nintendo 64. This is the same Nintendo 64 that I got for Christmas in 2000. It was a gift for me and my brother, my younger brother. Um, this was the first console we owned, but it was towards the end of the Nintendo 64 PS1 era, and we were really only there for that last year, because then the GameCube and Xbox came out that following year, and that the seventh generation, it was the sixth generation was in full swing by the following Christmas. So we had this for a good year, although we still played it a lot. I've still added to my collection quite a bit. So I do have quite a few controllers. Controller 3 and controller 4. And but anyways, that's enough of hardware. I don't want to focus too much on hardware, because that's not really the point of these videos, but I figured I'd show off that I still own my Nintendo 64. Now we're going to get into why people owned it, the games, the important part of the console. So flash forward to the spring of 1999. A year and a half before we got a Nintendo 64 ourselves. So, and I apologize if the camera's kind of shaking around. I'm relying on my crappy iMac built-in camera, built-in webcam. Flash back to the spring of 1999. These two kids move into our neighborhood. These two brothers. One of them was about my age, and the other was a few years older than him. My younger brother and I become fast friends with these two. We would ride bikes around the neighborhood, play in each other's backyards, and they had a swing set and we didn't at the time. We later did, but we would play on their swing set. But they had a Nintendo 64, and we would go over to their house and play Super Smash Brothers. Again, apologize for the camera move, but yes. Now this is obviously not their copy, but we would play Super Smash Brothers at their house all the time. And I remember the excitement we would have whenever they would unlock a new character. It was just so cool seeing all. Because here's the thing, this was both my introduction to video games, like console video games, and my introduction to Nintendo. Obviously, I knew about Mario and Luigi because they were everywhere. I knew about Pikachu and Jigglypuff because that was in the midst of the Pokemon craze. And I knew who Donkey Kong was because of the Donkey Kong Country series, the Donkey Kong Country animated series that was airing on Fox Kids at the time. But I had no idea who Link was. I had no idea who Samus or Fox or Kirby were, or who Yoshi was, or who Captain Falcon was, or who Ness was. So it got us really interested in Nintendo, and of course, I mained Donkey Kong at first, but then later, once they unlocked Captain Falcon, I mained Captain Falcon. My younger brother, he loved playing as Mario and Yoshi. The younger brother, among our friends, we'll just call them Bob and Jimmy. Bob was the older brother. Jimmy was the younger brother. Jimmy would play as Pikachu. He would usually play as Link. He mained Link, and then Bob, he mained Fox, and he sometimes plays as Captain Falcon, but he usually played as Red Fox. Fox in his red costume. But we loved this game. We would play this whenever we would go over to their house, we would play the Super Smash Brothers. And now this wasn't the only game we played over there. They also frequently rented Mario Party. And we would play that occasionally, And of course, I would play as Donkey Kong since I always played as Donkey Kong in Super Smash Bros. So I would play as Donkey Kong at first, but later on, which I'll get to later. But later on, I would main as Luigi. But but yeah, this was a frequent rent. We would play this. Another one that they frequently rented was Pokemon Stadium. Of course, this was not actually the first Pokemon Stadium that was ever made. In Japan, this was Pokemon Stadium 2. The original Pokemon Stadium in Japan was like very watered down. They were just kind of testing the waters. Like I think they only had like 30 playable Pokemon, and this had all of the original 151 from Gen 1. So of course this was fun to play, although of course it would be later surpassed by another game, which I'll get into later on. Finally, after about a year and a half of playing Nintendo 64 at our friend's house, finally in Christmas of 2000, we get the Nintendo 64. And along with the Nintendo 64 I got Power Rangers Lightspeed Rescue, and my brother got Rush 2, Rush 2 Extreme Racing USA, because my brother was really into cars at the time. He was obsessed with cars, and I was obsessed with Power Rangers. So they were the perfect gifts. I have previously done a Let's Play of Power Rangers Lightspeed Rescue. I had the hardest time as a kid playing through this, because I could never figure out how to beat bosses, how to get through the levels. But eventually we beat it, and we had a lot of fun playing it. It took us weeks to finally beat it, but it was fantastic. Or so I thought. Let's see, this is not my original copy that I got for Christmas. When my brother and I discovered trading at Blockbuster, we kind of gotten into the whole we would trade in games that we weren't really playing anymore at the time. Of course, as I explained in my GameCube collection video, my brother got into it way more than I did. Like, he would trade in every single game he had beaten, or every single game he owned that he wasn't going to play anymore, of course, and would later regret it. And I traded in Power Rangers Lightspeed Rescue. This copy I rebought on Amazon in 2013, and then upon that I actually did a Let's Play on this channel, and boy, was the game torture. It was not nearly as good as I had remembered it.
Somebody help me!
Somebody help me!
Somebody help me!
Somebody help me! It was indeed kind of a piece of shit. It was one of those really kind of crappy licensed games. Granted, there have been way worse. For example, Power Rangers Time Force on the PS1. Whoops. Power Rangers Time Force on the PS1, which I'll get into that later once I do my PS1 collection, whenever I get around to that. Rush 2, the same kind of deal, although this is actually pretty fun. This was my brother's game that he got for Christmas. We had a lot of fun. The best part about this, though, was definitely the stunt track. The stunt track was... We would play that for hours and hours and hours. It was a lot of fun. The racing was just kind of average. Again, this isn't the original copy that my brother got for Christmas. He traded his in, and then I rebought this along with Power Rangers Lightspeed Rescue over Amazon in 2013. Once I started collecting more and was getting back into gaming. But yeah, the racing is not really anything special. It's still fun. But it's kind of your run-of-the-mill arcade racing game. But the stunt track is a lot of fun. That is the best part of this game, in my opinion. Of course, being young kids, we didn't get a lot of new games. We didn't have the money to buy our own games. That was when our parents were saying, okay, if you're gonna buy a game. So at that point, it was if you were gonna get a new game, we had to save our money for it and pay for it ourselves. And usually, if we got a new game, it was for birthdays or Christmas or holidays or whatever. So the first new game that we got was Super Smash Bros. My dad got this for me for my birthday the following February. It was for my 8th birthday. And of course, we loved it. Of course, as always, just like at our friends Bob and Jimmy's house. We loved this game. We were really looking forward to Super Smash Bros. Melee once we found out about that game. But yeah, definitely loads of fun. I just remember the excitement of whenever we unlocked a new character, especially when we unlocked Ness. Jigglypuff, Captain Falcon, and Luigi, they were pretty easy to unlock, but Ness having to beat one player game on normal mode, which for us was like super challenging. Obviously, it's not as hard once you get older, but still, of course, loads of fun. As for Mario Party and Pokemon Stadium, going back to them, those would go on to be frequent rent. See, after we got our Nintendo 64, we would go to Blockbuster every Friday, and we would each get to rent two games. Mario Party and Pokemon Stadium, like Bob and Jimmy's frequent rents, we also rented them quite often. Mario Party 4, much more so. Pokemon Stadium, we didn't rent as much. But Mario Party, of course, like I said, a lot of fun to play. Even our older sister would come and play with us sometimes because like she didn't normally play video games. Like she never really got into Super Smash Brothers, but like she would play Mario Party with us occasionally. Um, my brother, he would alternate between Mario and Yoshi. My sister would play as Princess Peach, and then I would play. At first, I would play as Donkey Kong, but later on, I would play as Luigi, who is my favorite Mario character. Not sure if I would say he's my favorite Nintendo character. Definitely not my favorite video game character now, but still my favorite Mario character. I still always play as Luigi in every Mario game that gives me the option to play as him. Another frequent rent was Mario Party 2, which, in my opinion, is the very best Mario Party game to this day. No Mario Party game has surpassed it. It had the best boards, the best mini games. It wasn't exactly a story mode, but it was like you would unlock Bowser Land upon completing the other five boards available from the start. And that would lead into the story where Toad gets captured, and you have to play through Bowser Land to rescue Toad. And then the final showdown with Bowser. And after completing a Bowser Land game, it would turn out to be it's a stage show. And I just remember it was just the Nintendo magic at the time. It was a lot like the Disney magic, the Nintendo magic. You know, you would have the credits roll, and it's like this parade of all the characters that have appeared throughout Mario Party 2 in the various boards and mini games. It was just so cool. It was just so magical watching that for the first time. It's still one of my favorite credit sequences. But yes, indeed, the best Mario Party game in my opinion. But yeah, how I actually got this game, I had rented this so much. And during spring break, I would get up at 6 in the morning to play the mini games. And my dad saw that I loved it so much that he decided to just go ahead and buy it for me. It was one of those rare occasions where where my parents would buy a game for us that wasn't on a holiday or on Christmas that wasn't on Christmas or a birthday or whatever. Now, Pokemon Stadium 2, actually, I got this. My dad took my brother and I to Toys R Us to get each of us a game. I can't remember why. I think it was for completing. We had something called the 100 Book Club in elementary school, and if you read 100 books in a given school year, you would be considered part of the 100 Book Club. But like my brother and I both were part of that. I think we completed our 100 book club that year. So as a reward, my dad got each of us a game. I think my brother got Madden 2001. And then, of course, I saw Pokemon Stadium 2. Now, I had never seen anything of it. I had never played it. But we had rented the original Pokemon Stadium a few times, so I figured gotta get Pokemon Stadium 2 because I was huge into Pokemon. That was in the midst of the Pokemon craze. Now, of course, this wasn't Pokemon Stadium 2 in Japan. This was originally known as Pokemon Gold and Silver, but they renamed it Pokemon Stadium 2 since the actual Pokemon Stadium 2 became Pokemon Stadium here. So they renamed Gold Pokemon Stadium GS as Pokemon Stadium 2. This was even better than the original Pokemon Stadium. This had all the Pokemon up to Generation 2, had better mini games. It had that library where you could, and I loved the library because you could read up on all the Pokemon, all the evolutionary types, all the evolutionary families, which I always loved looking up. I would spend a lot of time on that, going through that library. And of course, there was the Gym Leader Castle, which was a lot of fun. I never beat it though. I never beat the Gym Leader Castle. There was also all the cups, the Pokeball, the Great Ball, the Ultra Ball, and the Master Ball cups. But yeah, this was a lot of fun. Still love playing this. I consider this the best Pokemon game on the Nintendo 64, hands down. Mario Party 3. This was also a frequent rent when it first came out in the spring of 2001. Of course, at first I loved it. I loved the mini games. I loved the boards. This was the first to include story mode, so that was something new. And it also added Daisy and Waluigi, two brand new playable characters. I will say Mario Party 3 is a great game, but I don't consider it as good as Mario Party 2. For a while I hated it, and it was for a stupid reason. I had bought this from Blockbuster in 2001 and later traded it in. Now this particular copy I bought at MagFest in 2014. Definitely the story mode was the highlight of this, and kind of that Mount Rushmore. But I will say the boards here, the boards aren't as good. The boards aren't as imaginative. They're not as appealing. Mario Party 2 had much better boards. The boards were kind of bland, not as memorable, and the mini games are great, but not as good as in Mario Party 2. This was the first one that didn't bring back any mini games from previous titles. See, Mario Party 2 brought back a bunch of mini games. So, the best mini games from Mario Party 1, Platform Peril, Bumper Balls, Hexagon Havoc, which was a redo of Mushroom Mix-Up, Slot Car Derby, and a bunch of others that I can't name right now. But Mario Party 3 didn't bring back any of those, but it's still a great game, but not as good as Mario Party 2. And that was pretty much the last game that we bought, when the Nintendo 64 was still the main console. After that, anything we bought used. But first I'll go over a bunch of games that we rented quite frequently. Super Mario 64, my younger brother rented this a lot. Of course, I loved this game too. Very groundbreaking, obviously. The first full 3D platformer. Nobody had seen anything like it. It was just had a huge impact on the gaming industry as a whole. I will say, in terms of the 3D Mario platformers, I feel like Super Mario Galaxy is the best of them. I feel like it improved upon this one. Of course, this one is still a great game, though. I can't remember where we got this particular copy. I think my mom found it at Goodwill, or my brother found it. I'm not sure if this is even the original copy we own, because I think my brother traded in his original copy and then rebought it from Goodwill. Of course, very groundbreaking game. We played it a lot. My brother more so. This is still his favorite Mario game. He never really got into any of the later ones. He was never really able to get into Galaxy. But of course, very monumental game. Another game we rented, actually this was a game my sister rented, Ms. Pac-Man Maze Madness. And obviously we had not heard of Pac-Man prior to playing this game. Of course, it was a lot of fun. Very fun maze. Very fun puzzle slash maze game. Slash platformer, whatever you want to call it. I'm not sure what the genre for this would be, because it was like more of like a combination of a puzzle and platformer. Um, but yeah, we had never bought this until I actually bought this copy on Amazon in 2013. Never beat the game. Definitely a good Nintendo 64 game. This is also on the PS1 and the Dreamcast. I'm not sure which would be better. I know the PS1 version had better sound because obviously because the PS1 was CD based while this was cartridge based. But let me know what you guys think for those of you who have played the PS1 version. And of course, NFL Blitz. My brother rented this a lot. Um, I think he actually later ended up buying this from Blockbuster. As for me in general, I do not give a shit about sports games. Um, my brother's a huge sports fan though, and this is actually a lot of fun. I don't really play it though. But yeah, this is a one sports game that aside from like the Mario sports games, that I could play and enjoy. I mean, it's just super over the top, and they've never really brought it back. I mean, they did in 20. I think they did. Yeah, they did in 2012. I should know because I included this in my. I included the new NFL Blitz in my Remember 2012 video, but of course, never played that one either. Of course, very fun sports game. Specifically, this is NFL Blitz 2000. I'm not sure if there. I think there were earlier versions, but there were quite a few versions of NFL Blitz. But this is the version that I have. Another frequent rent, Mario Kart 64. Of course, everybody has to have this game. Still considered by many to be the best Mario Kart game. I wouldn't. I feel like in general, each Mario Kart game gets better with each installment. But we would rent this a lot. We enjoyed the racing. We enjoyed we loved the battle mode. My brother would always play as either Yoshi or Mario. I would play as Luigi. Um, but we would rent this a lot. We never owned it though. We never bought a copy until this particular copy. I have a store. There's a store about 5 minutes from where I live called the Exchange. There are actually a few locations, but I mean it's not a huge business. But I'm lucky enough to have a location a few blocks from where I live. They sell they sell retro games. They sell old movies and DVDs and music and all kinds of stuff. And I bought this copy from the Exchange. Still a lot of fun, though of course games like Mario Kart 8 have much surpassed it. Much larger roster to choose from in those games, but this had the but this is still a classic. This is a must-have if you own a Nintendo 64. Diddy Kong Racing, another great Nintendo 64 game and rent. I'm not sure where I got this copy. I think I probably bought it from Blockbuster because I've had it for quite a few years. I know I definitely didn't get it from GameStop, but definitely a very fun racer. It was like it took what was great about Mario Kart 64 and brought it to the next level. I mean, three different you have the cart, the hovercraft, and the plane. I always loved the plane races. Of course, you have a story mode in this. A lot of great tracks. And this was the game. This game also happened to include Banjo and Conker, two very well-known rare mascots who unfortunately are under the stranglehold of Microsoft now. Um, a lot of people would love to see them come back in later games, but it'll never happen, unfortunately. Unless they make like an Xbox All Stars fighting game. But of course that's never gonna happen. But like I played as Timber the Tiger, because tigers are my favorite animal, so I loved playing as Timber the Tiger. He was my main. I can't remember who my brother would usually play as. I think he. Well, actually, no. My brother loved playing as Conker, and he didn't even know about Conker's Bad Fur Day. At the time, he would have been. extremely offended though by by Conquer Bad Fur Day because he was very offended by swear words. But yeah, this game was loads of fun. Donkey Kong 64. I think I rented this once, but like I wasn't able to play. I rented this twice, but I wasn't able to play it at first because this game required an expansion pack, and Blockbuster wouldn't give you the expansion pack when you rented this game. So eventually we did buy our own expansion pack. I've never gotten very far in this game though. From what I played though, it's a lot of fun. It's just I just for whatever reason I was never really able to get into it. Um, but yeah, this particular copy I bought at Play and Trade in 2009. I think in 2010. But yeah, definitely a fun game though. That's all I really have to say on it. Other than it being like a ridiculous collectathon, one of those collectathons like that Rare put out, like Donkey Kong 64 or the Banjo Kazooie and Banjo Tooie. But yeah, definitely came out during that era of all the cutesy platforming games that were coming out. Star Fox 64. Have a lot of experiences with this. For a long time, one of my favorite Nintendo franchises. One of my favorite games on the Nintendo 64, if not my favorite. I'm not sure what I would consider my favorite, but definitely one of my most played. Um, has a lot of replay value. There are so because of all the different outcomes you can get in certain missions. There's like 3 different paths you can go on. Um, well, I think Star Fox Assault surpasses this. Star Fox 64 is still a close second, and most Star Fox games have never quite been able to live up to it. Loved Fox, loved Falco. Falco's my favorite character, even though he is kind of a douchebag. Although he does mellow out later in the series. Of course, Lippy is annoying as ever. Peppy is awesome, but just general an awesome game to play. And I think I bought this. I think I got this copy. Pretty sure I got the. Pretty sure my mom found this at Goodwill. No, actually, I think my mom found this at a Half Price Books. Um, for those of you who don't know what a Half Price Books is, I'm not sure how many of them are out there. Of course, it's mostly a bookstore. They sell books that people have traded in, but they also sell video game. They also accept trade-ins on video games. They sell old video games. So it's a lot like Goodwill, except the focus is mostly on books. Tigger's Honey Hunt. Actually, this had pretty good graphics for a Nintendo 64 game. But it is super easy. It is great for little kids. Of course, I loved it. Like I was like, what, 8 years old when I played this. Rented this a lot. They actually had this at um, they actually had this playable at McDonald's Play Place, so we played it there too. But yeah, great game for little kids. And then I saw this at MagFest in 2015 and bought it. Um, Definitely a good game for little kids, but it is so easy. It is so silly, but actually not a bad game. Surprisingly pretty good for little kids. It's actually a pretty decent platformer though. Now Spider-Man. This was also on the PS1. Um, it's hard to say which version was better. Some people say the PS1, some people say the Nintendo 64. My brother rented this a couple times and played through it. And at the time we loved it. And of course, we watched the '90s cartoon on Fox Kids. This was really what our introduction to most of the Spider-Man villains. This is how I knew about Venom and the Scorpion, Rhino. Um, who else was in there? Mysterio. Although we never beat the game. We got about halfway through it and then we had to take it back to Blockbuster. Bought this copy at MagFest in 2015 and actually did a full playthrough last year. I will say this game has not aged well. The controls are kind of... mostly with the controls are really loose and off in some places. Still a fun game to play. It just has not aged well. Particularly with the controls, like I said. Still a fun game nonetheless, but like I wouldn't consider this a top 10 or top 20 game. Mario Golf, we rented this. One of the weird things though was that you had to unlock Mario. This had a lot of characters original to this game that they never brought back. You had, of course, the most notable being Plum and Charlie, but you also had Sunny, Harry, um, quite a few characters. All the major characters like Mario you had to unlock, Luigi you had to unlock, at least in single player. Wario you had to unlock, Bowser you had to unlock. But definitely a good golf game. Definitely a fun game. Now this copy, this and the next few games I'm going to be showing. We got these from our neighbor across the street. They had a bunch of Nintendo 64 games, and they weren't really They weren't really hardcore gamers. They were more casual. Like they were into Halo and stuff, but like they weren't really into their Nintendo 64 games anymore. So they gave a few of their games to us. And this was one of them. F-Zero X. We actually had two copies of this game at once. There was our copy, my copy that I own now, which was from our neighbors, but we had already bought a copy from Blockbuster. So we later traded that one back in, since there was no point in having two copies. But as for the game itself, very fun racing game. Love this game. Definitely a lot of fun to play. High speed, 60 frames per second. What more could you want? Well, yeah, I do play this time to time. It's a lot of fun for me to play. One of my favorite games on the system, hands down. GoldenEye 007, another game that I got from my neighbor. Extremely monumental game. Now, we weren't allowed to play this when we were younger. We weren't allowed to rent it because it was rated T. But our neighbor across the street, in our old neighborhood, I should say, he had this game, and his I don't know why he had it, but like his mom wouldn't let him play it. But whenever his mom wasn't around, he would play it, and of course his mom would get mad at him whenever she caught him playing it. But yeah, my brother even snuck a playthrough when he was over at his house one day. I don't play this a lot. I never really got into it, but of course you cannot deny what it did for first-person shooters. This really pioneered console first-person shooters, and you cannot deny the impact of it. The last game that we got from our neighbors, Wave Race 64, and I don't think I've even actually played it, but you know I might as well just show it now. Mickey Speedway USA, definitely came during that time where you had a lot of Mario Kart clones. And this is pretty much a Mario Kart clone, although it is pretty decent, and you do go to a lot of different cities. This came out the same year as another Disney racing game on the PS1 called Walt Disney World Quest Magical Racing Tour, and I actually prefer that one since I'm a huge Disney World nut, and I prefer racing through Disney World attractions to racing through cities. Um, kind of generic versions of cities, locations. Although the first track in the first cup is Indianapolis, which is where I live. In the suburbs of Indianapolis, I should say, but still, I do go to school in Indianapolis, though. But definitely a fun racer, developed by Rare, where actually, which is why this is so good, and very similar to very similar to Diddy Kong Racing, more so than Mario Kart 64. But definitely a fun racer. Play it from time to time, though, although not a lot. I actually rented this. I only rented this once, though. Cruisin' World and Cruisin' Exotica. I used to have Cruisin' USA, although I don't have that anymore. I think my brother must have traded that into Amazon. No, wait, not Amazon. Must have traded that into Blockbuster during his trade-in phase. I think we got both of these. I'm not sure where we got these, either of these games. Probably from Goodwill. I think my mom got these at Goodwill, but I used to play Cruisin' World. They had an arcade at our grocery store. They had an arcade of Cruisin' World there, and we would play that every week. But it was definitely a lot of fun to play in the arcades. Definitely fun to play on the Nintendo 64. Exotica I haven't played as much, but both definitely good racing titles. Star Wars Shadow of the Empire. I've never actually played this. My mom found this at Goodwill one day, so she bought it. But I have really nothing left to say on this, other than I think this was the first Star Wars Nintendo 64 game, and it pretty much started the now defunct expanded universe, which has now been declared non-canon. So I imagine this was a pretty fun game. Star Wars Episode 1 Racer. Never played this. Gets a mixed reaction from a lot of people. A lot of people love it. A lot of people hate it. I've never played it. My mom just found this at Goodwill one day. But yeah, I should probably give it a shot at some point. Pokemon Puzzle League. This was not a frequent rent. I rented this once, but I loved playing it. It was a great puzzle game. It was based on Panel Upon, which became Tetris Attack in North America on the Super Nintendo. And I think this was actually the made for North American audiences. This was one of the few Pokemon games that was largely based around the anime at the time. But this is definitely a fun puzzle game. I play this from time to time. Love the puzzle aspect of it. Love it so much. Bought this particular copy at Play and Trade in 2009. During that same trip, I bought Kirby 64 The Crystal Shards, which was also a game that I rented once. Very good console Kirby game. What was fun about it, though, what was most notable about it was that you actually teamed up with a bunch of your enemies. Like, you team up with Waddle Dee, and you team up with King Dedede, and I think her name was Adelaide the Painter. But I think that she was like an original character for this game. But definitely a fun game. What was cool about it was that you could combine powers. Like, you could combine, like, the spike ability with the fire ability to create a fire sword. You could mix and match power-ups and elements to create even more powerful weapons. So that was a lot of fun. Never beat it, though, but definitely have a lot of fun playing it whenever I get around to doing so. Jet Force Gemini. This was a game that I bought at my first MagFest in 2014. Found it for pretty cheap. I bought it thanks to CJS Zero One. I watched his video on. I think it was like the top 10 most underrated Nintendo 64 games, or it was a list of underrated games, and he included it. Definitely, this is something that was not really popular. I don't think it was very popular at the time, but like it's developed a cult following over time. But like, this was definitely a very fun game, although very bad controls. There's no way to go around it. The controls on this are very stiff. Aiming is quite stiff in this game, and the collecting of and saving all the tribals is pretty tedious. Which is part of why I've never beaten this game. But it is definitely a lot of fun. And a game I would eventually like to beat. It's just I've never been able to, gotten around to doing so. Banjo-Kazooie was another game I bought at MagFest in 2014. Had never played it before. I've again never gotten far in this. It's one of those platformers that you kind of really got to get into, like the whole collectathon aspect. I've gotten through the first level, although I never gotten any further than that. But it's definitely a fun game. Definitely see why this is considered a classic, one of the best Nintendo 64 games. Rare put out a lot of great games. Like, Rare was Nintendo's best third-party support. It's just too bad that Microsoft bought out Rare and really didn't do anything with it. Other than Viva Pinata, but that's another video for another day. Star Wars Rogue Squadron. Love this game. Bought this in MagFest. Also bought this at MagFest in 2014. No Star Wars game has done space combat better than Star Wars Rogue Squadron series. Rogue Squadron 2 took what was great about this and perfected it. But still, this was the starting point. This was a fantastic game. Did a full playthrough last year. I will say the difficulty is very challenging game, and I will say the lighting in certain places really. The lighting, particularly in the soloist stage towards the end, is very not very good. The lighting is kind of crap in the dark areas, and that's just a problem for games in general before the HD era. Definitely a fantastic game, best Star Wars game on the Nintendo 64, hands down. Rampage World Tour, another one of the Rampage games in this series. Bought this at Magfest in 2014. I will say it's about average as best. It's a good time waster. This actually didn't get very good reviews. Got pretty negative reviews when it first came out. Definitely not a bad game, but it's not a great game, but it is a good time waster. Mario Tennis, bought this at the Exchange in 2014. The vintage movie music video game store that I was talking about earlier. Bought this from there, the Exchange, in 2014. Definitely a very good tennis game. This was the game that brought back Birdo, brought back a very obscure Mario character, and of course Birdo is now a mainstay of the Mario spin-offs, or at least was for a time, definitely throughout the GameCube era. Definitely a very good tennis game. Actually first played this, we were at the Great Wolf Lodge in the summer of 2002, and one of the things they had you could play video games there for about an hour. And one of the games that they had Nintendo 64 games on demand, and one of the games was Mario Tennis, and this was our favorite one to play at Great Wolf Lodge. But yeah, finally bought this at the Exchange in 2014. Still a very fun tennis game, although Mario Power Tennis definitely improved upon it, but this was the starting point. Definitely a very fun tennis game. Army Men Air Combat. Now, we had played a demo of Army Men RTS on the PS2 way back when. And I remember hearing about the Army Men games, and then I decided to give Air Combat. Bought this at Magfest in 2015. It's a fun game. It's good. Not anything to write home about, but still a fun game. Still a fun Air Combat game. Turok. Bought this at Magfest in 2016. Have not played it, so I can't really say anything on it. It's just a game I own at this point. Same with Turok 2. Bought this at Magfest in 2016. Have not played it, so I can't really give my opinion on it. Blast Corps. Bought this at Magfest in 2016. I actually have played a little bit of it. It's a good time waster. Definitely a fun game. A good time waster, but again, nothing spectacular. Now this game, Mischief Makers, on the Nintendo 64. Bought this at Magfest in 2016. Bought this particular copy at Magfest in 2016, earlier this year. But the thing is, you probably can't tell, but this cartridge is in horrible condition. Finally was going to play it one day, only to find out it's so badly damaged, my Nintendo 64 can't even play it. And most cartridges I've bought have been in at least in good enough condition to where they still work and stuff. I mean, cartridges aren't easy to damage, but this is in terrible condition. I mean, if you can see that metal part in between, it is. I know you probably can't see it because it's dark in there, and the camera quality here is so crappy, but it is all rusted and stuff. It is in shitty condition. And the only reason that I've kept this copy to show you guys, I'm throwing this in the trash once I'm finished with this video. So, goodbye. Ended up buying a new copy over Amazon. Give this a go. Definitely a fun game on Nintendo 64. Good puzzle game, good platformer. And I'm hoping Marina Light Years, since this game was made by Enix, I'm hoping Marina Light Years makes a cameo if they do a Wreck-It Ralph world in Kingdom Hearts 3. I'm hoping Marina Light Years makes a cameo in that game, because they're probably not going to be able to bring in most of the movie characters. I mean, most of the video game characters from the movie, since most of those were in the movie, since most of those were first party to Nintendo or third party to companies other than Square Enix. Star Wars Battle for Naboo. Bought this off of Amazon earlier this year. Bought this because because it was a spiritual successor to Rogue Squadron. It was pretty much Rogue Squadron, except set during the time of Star Wars Episode 1. I've heard this is a great game. I've never gotten a chance to actually play it, but I definitely do look forward to playing it whenever I finally get around to doing so. Snowboard Kids. This was the most recent game I bought off of Amazon. Haven't played it yet, although I've heard a lot of good things about it. It's a good snowboarding racing game, and definitely looking forward to getting around to playing it. These last three games, NBA Live 99, Triple Play 2000, and Ridge Racer 64. I have not played any of these and have no interest in playing them. My mom found, I think these were all my brother's. My mom found them at Goodwill. They were all games that my brother played. And I don't really give a shit about sports games, obviously. I'm not really interested in Ridge Racer, so... I mean, these are just part of my collection. I've actually boxed a bunch of my Nintendo 64 games via customgamecases.com. Let me check. Customgamecases.com. I've boxed a bunch of my games. The first of which, Power Rangers Lightspeed Rescue. These are a lot like the Blockbuster copies. The boxes that you would see at Blockbuster, except it actually has the actual cover art, the actual cover art, the actual back art. You put your games in. You guys can see. You put your games in like this. Star Wars Rogue Squadron, Rush 2, Pokemon Puzzle League, F-Zero X, Banjo-Kazooie, Jet Force Gemini, Pokemon Stadium 2, Star Fox 64, GoldenEye 007, Mario Kart 64, Super Mario 64, Ms. Pac-Man, Mario Party 2, and of course, Super Smash Brothers. So an addendum to this video, this N64 collection, those previous sections you saw, those were recorded 2 weeks ago. And I had realized I had forgot to talk about games that I had previously owned but had since traded in or had sold. But before I get to that, since then I've actually gotten some more custom game cases. The first, Spider-Man, Mickey Speedway USA, Mario Tennis, Donkey Kong 64, and Diddy Kong Racing. As for games that I had previously owned but later traded in, or games that were frequent rents but we never bought, I don't have as many of those because like I said before, we got the Nintendo 64 towards the end of its life cycle, so we didn't get a chance to buy a lot of N64 games when they were brand new. But like right now there are only a couple games that really come to mind that I previously owned but later traded in. The first being Zelda Majora's Mask. We had owned a copy of that at one point. But it was my brother's, and as I've established, my brother went through this phase where he had to trade in every single game that he owned, that he wasn't playing anymore, so he traded that in. My brother had also owned Madden 2001 on Nintendo 64, but he traded that in too, which wasn't really much of a loss, because I never liked Madden, so... We also previously owned a copy of Paper Mario on the Nintendo 64, and that was also my brother's, and he traded that in, and that had also been a frequent rent. I never rebought it because because I have it on Virtual Console now. Speaking of which... Well, anyways, here are some of my titles on Virtual Console. I'm just going to go over the Nintendo 64 titles. I know I'm kind of cheating. These technically aren't part of my Nintendo 64 collection, but still. The first being the aforementioned Paper Mario that I was talking about just earlier that we previously owned. Well, it was my brother's. My brother's copy, but he traded it in. Pokemon Snap. Honestly, I'm not a huge fan of Pokemon Snap. It's definitely a fun game, but like I don't love it like nearly as much as some others do. Like a lot of people consider it the best Pokemon game on Nintendo 64. When I disagree incredibly. Like I think Pokemon Stadium 2 slash aka Pokemon Stadium Gold and Silver, as it was known in Japan, was way better. Was takes the cake as best Pokemon game on Nintendo 64. Still a fun game, good time waster, and definitely had a lot of fun. As a kid, it was a frequent rent. Yoshi's Story was another frequent rent. Got it on Virtual Console a few years ago, probably when the game first came out on Virtual Console. But yeah, definitely a very fun Yoshi game. Personally my favorite Yoshi game. Although I haven't played all the Yoshi games, I've played Story and Wally World. Of course, Zelda Ocarina of Time, considered one of the greatest video games of all time, if not the greatest video game of all time. It's often number one on greatest video games of all time. I'm not sure if I would consider it that. Personally, I don't think you could really consider one game to be greatest game of all time. And of course, we also have Super Mario 64 on Virtual Console as well as on cartridge. But yeah, as I was saying about Zelda Ocarina of Time, it had a huge impact on the gaming industry as a whole. Definitely a very great game. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Enjoyed me showing off my Nintendo 64 collection. So this is Kate Jedi Master signing off.